Yarr! Fear me, puddle, ye filthy landlubbers! So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and Hydroid over here got a wee bit of a buff with update 21.5. And by wee bit of a buff, I mean they did the DE thing and made him one of the most damaging Warframes in the entire game. Now at first they did say that this was unintentional and they are looking into this, but then update 21.5 was released and it wasn't nerfed, and then I've heard some rumors on the internet, which may not be true, that they are leaning more towards, well, if enough people like this we will keep it this way, and if that's the case it will stay this way, because people like big damage, and that's exactly what Hydroid has right now. If you can get an enemy into your undertow, they are dead in like 3 to 5 seconds. If the enemy is an infested or a corpus unit, they will just die from the stacking damage you get from undertow, and if the enemy is a Grineer and they have high armor, you just use Corroding Barrage to strip away their armor, because Corroding Barrage or Tempest Barrage in general can hit enemies in undertow. And since the enemies are all nice and bunched up in your undertow, they're gonna get hit by multiple bolts most likely, so their armor will just melt, and then the stacking damage from undertow will take them down very quickly. So what did they change with undertow that made it so strong? Well, they did a couple of things. First of all, they nerfed it a little bit by changing the type of damage undertow deals from finisher damage, which is really good because it bypasses armor, which is really strong, into impact, which is not so good. But then they changed the flat damage value of undertow into a percentage-based value, so it would now drain 2% of the enemy's health every time the damage would tick, which is then scaled based on how long the enemy is submerged in undertow, so the longer they are there, the higher damage they're gonna take. But it's also scaled by the number of enemies in undertow, so the longer the enemy is in undertow and the more enemies you have in undertow, the more damage you are going to do with it. And I guess they thought it was a good idea to make it scale with power strength as well. This results in some obscene damage over time, even versus armored units, because even though it does impact damage, you once again have access to Corroding Barrage, so you can strip away the enemy armor. And people are going nuts over this, some are even calling it overpowered. But here is the thing. Unless you're using something like the Zenistar, which allows you to basically just hide around a corner and crowd control everything that tries to come anywhere near you, or you have a good group that's helping you out, you are probably not going to make it to a point where the enemy scales so high this damage actually starts to matter. There are just too many things working against you while you're in undertow, which is why I actually believe the rumor that they may keep it like this. It's just hard to pull off the kind of numbers you see everyone pulling off in the simulacrum. It's not impossible, you can definitely do it, it's that it's just hard. Because almost everyone, including myself, uses either Warframe invincibility or they turn off enemy AI when they're showcasing this in the simulacrum. Why? Because you can't get anywhere near those kinds of enemies on Hydroid. You can be cheeky and try to hit them with a barrage or tentacle swarm and hope they will stay crowd controlled until you get underneath them and turn into a puddle, but most of the time that just doesn't work. And even if you're amazing at Hydroid and you can crowd control those enemies reliably and you're using undertow defensively so you're not dying and you survive to get to those levels, Eximus units will start spawning, and the biggest one here is Eximusal Leech, because even if you get them into undertow and you kill them as soon as possible, you're still going to lose a large chunk of your energy. And if you don't have a good group and you run out of energy, you're going to die. You're just dead. Because Hydroid, even though they did buff his survivability a little bit, is not the tankiest frame by any means. And it's not just Eximus Leeches, there are other units that are kind of a nightmare to deal with if you're playing in undertow as well, like Ancient Healers. I would really like to know what you guys think about this, because it may just be me, because I was okay with the way undertow worked previously. I would use it when I had to alt-tap out of the game, or when I had to defend a cryopod or an excavator, or when there was just too much damage coming my way, so I would just bloop, turn into a puddle, wait it out a little bit, wait for my shields to regenerate, and then I would emerge again. But the more they buff it, the more I feel like I should actually use it in combat because it does really good damage. And I really don't like that, because undertow is boring. A lot of people like to make the argument that undertow is boring because it restricts your movement too much. You are not very mobile while in undertow. But if you look at it that way, Messa's Peacemaker is way worse because you can't move at all while you're in Peacemaker, yet it's not boring. Why? Well, because you're comparing a puddle to an awesome gunslinger. A puddle, a gunslinger. One of them is a little bit more fun than the other, is it not? So I don't think it's the mobility, I think it's just the ability itself. It's just boring. Do you know what I personally would like them to do with Hydroid? I would like them to basically swap Undertow with Tentacle Swarm. So instead of turning into a puddle, you would just drop a puddle on the ground and maybe you'll be able to jump into it if that's what you wanted to do. And instead of dropping down tentacles, you would turn into the Kraken that would then spawn or control the tentacles. And they could make it synergize and work well with each other. Like if you're standing outside of Undertow, you will just spawn the standard Tentacle Swarm. But if you're standing in Undertow, you will spawn the Kraken as well, which you can then use to grab enemies with the tentacles and drop them into Undertow and things like that. But anyway, I think I've been rambling for long enough and I kind of want to keep this short, so let's go over the other changes very quickly as well. So they made the tentacles from Tentacle Swarm flail around much slower, which makes it much easier to hit enemies, which is a very good change because what I resorted to when I was playing with Pilfering Swarm is to just running the Guandao and whirlwinding through the tentacles because they flailed around so fast. It was kind of impossible to hit the majority of enemies that got caught by the tentacles. And the second change that I also liked a lot is that Charging Tempest Barrage now plays sort of a watery / hydromancy kind of sound. It's kind of like water swishing over. And that's really good because before there was kind of like no feedback for you to let you know that yes, you are charging Tempest Barrage. It was just like nothing, 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 boom, Tempest Barrage. So this is a good change as well. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. So once again, I would really like to know what you guys think about this change. So please let me know in the comment section down below. I thank you very much for watching as always, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.